This is Twit.
So, have you ever heard of a DIY phone farm before?
DIY? No, that's bananas.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I'd heard of phone farms, but I didn't know that people were just like springing these up in their homes. I hadn't read about it until an article on Motherboard talking about how everyday Americans are using them to make money online. The author of the piece, of course, Joseph Cox, is here to tell us about this. Well, I think you could call this a fraud scheme, right, Joseph?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely some sort of fraud. The ad fraud ecosystem is pretty large, and this is, of course, a small part of it. But they are tricking companies into giving them some sort of funds. So, yeah, in a way, it is fraud, yeah.
So phone farms are not new. You talk in the piece about how there are operations in places like China that are springing up phone farms for a number of reasons. Why do they exist? What is the goal of their operations?
Yeah, so every few months you'll see a video on Twitter or YouTube or something go viral, and it'll be of this Chinese or in Thailand, a phone farm, and it will be these dozens, if not hundreds of phones all lined up doing various things. Sometimes there are people tapping on them physically, or sometimes they're sort of run by automation software. As far as I understand, the ones overseas are particularly used for, okay, I have an app and now I want to get it higher up in the App Store ratings on the Google Play Store or something like that. So they can look like, oh, a load of people have reviewed this app and it's really, really popular. And maybe they also sell likes or engagement on Instagram, that sort of thing. With the Americans, it's a little bit different. They're not so much selling a service as the Chinese ones. You'll go and say, hey, I want to improve my app. Please, could you do that? The American DIY phone farms are doing more ad fraud. So they will download an app onto their phone. And the way the app usually works is like, hey, if you watch this Netflix trailer and you basically give us your attention, we will then trade that for some, digital currency. It'll be little points to use in the app or something like that. And if you get enough of them, you can trade that for, until recently, real money or Amazon gift cards or something like that. Of course, these phone farmers, they aren't really actually watching those adverts. They're also buying dozens or around 100 phones and streaming all of that content at the same time. So whereas the Chinese are focused on the social media manipulation stuff, the Americans are more on, well, I'm going to get some extra income for myself, basically. And that's how people were using them.
And they're incentivized through the app. The app is kind of their conduit running on this phone to visit the site, witness the ad, or technically witness the ad, and then the developer of the app then passes the money that they're making through these views onto the phone farmers. Is that how it works?
Yeah, so it's probably worth just defining it there. I mean, use the word incentivized, and that's exactly it. There's a model or I guess a technique in marketing called incentivized traffic, whereas usually you watch an advert or you see an advert in your web browser, that's just normal. You don't get paid for that, right? Just hopefully you'll go buy their products. In incentivized marketing, it flips that on its head, and it is the consumer of the advert who is getting a little bit of money or currency or whatever. So yeah, it's kind of just flipping that idea around and then taking as much advantage of it as possible with these phone farms.
So then they're looking for specific apps that offer this incentivized traffic, as opposed to, I go and download Phone Farm, which is an app where you build your own farm, say, and in that app I can collect crystals that then help me play the game. These are apps where you download it, and if you watch the ads in it, then at some point you can cash in your hours watched for an Amazon gift card or something like that. Correct?
Yeah, exactly. So these are dedicated apps, as you say, to this incentivized marketing model. And those are perfectly legitimate. Some advertising experts I spoke to said that the idea of incentivized traffic, some clients want that. One app in particular is very closely linked to sort of the cryptocurrency space. And apparently they see some sort of value in, well, if we give our adverts in this way to people, maybe we're going to get a higher rate of return. And that's perfectly fine and legitimate, and people, of course, can do that. It's when someone starts using dozens or hundreds of phones to sort of defraud that approach.
Wow. So then how like hands-on do people have to be? Like I kind of envision them having a number of phones, which, they had to fund the investment of buying those phones to begin with. How hands-on do they have to be once these things are running, and how lucrative can it be?
I mean, so the promise is that it's not really hands-on at all. You would imagine that they buy these phones, they set them up, and oh, wow, I get this passive income. And it can be that sometimes. It just really depends on the app because they're constantly changing. Some will block if you have too many devices. Some will lose their ad network customers because they don't want to be affiliated with phone farms. And sometimes the apps in our tests, because I also built a very small phone farm of just 4 separate phones, they're just very buggy. And they're not great pieces of software. So they will quite often, in my case, crash, and I have to go and reboot them and sometimes reboot the entire Android device. If you're working from home, or one person I spoke to was disabled at the time and they were unable to leave the house, it was okay for them because, you know, they were constantly around and they could reset the devices and all that sort of thing. But it's not as hands-off as you may imagine. Yeah, it's actually quite a bit of work, rather ironically, because the entire point is to get money without working. Yeah. But you do have to put in some effort, in my experience, yeah.
Wow. I mean, so then is it legal? I can't tell. It doesn't sound like it should be legal, but
right. The legality bit is a little bit difficult. I mean, what you could say certainly is that it's going to be a terms of service violation. If you're doing something like scraping LinkedIn, for instance, that's a terms of service violation. You're probably not going to get prosecuted, but LinkedIn will ban you. In a similar case with the phone farms, the apps will ban you, probably, but I can't see them pursuing charges. And this, it's important to remember. It's not on the scale it is in China. Like sure. The person I spoke to who made the most was making $1,800 to $2,000 a month, which is a sizable amount of money. But that was only for, I think, a year, maybe less than a year they were making that. Some of these people are making literally $40 a month, which they then use to buy food or diapers for their kids.
Right.
So I don't immediately see charges being brought. But the legality is sort of unclear. It depends if you then turn that into real fiat currency. If there was going to be a legal issue, I imagine it would be at that point.
Yeah.
Now, with this, with the incentivized traffic specifically, again, these apps that they download for the I watch and I get, are the developer on the other end that, you know, has put this app in the App Store, are they also making money off of the views? Or is it, I've chosen to serve ads in this app, and in doing so, only the person watching gets money? Or do both parties in that case get money from serving these ads?
So I'm not entirely sure on the specifics of each individual app, but very generally speaking, yes, the developers of the apps are still going to get money because I believe they are going to be getting funds or other benefits or other arrangements from sort of the ad networks themselves. These apps aren't designing the adverts, of course. They're not creating them. They are delivering them, but in a more traditional ad environment, when you go and you're on a website and you see an ad pop up, there is an ad network that has delivered that. It's another part of the ecosystem. So the apps here will be getting some sort of financial incentive as well themselves. I mean, they're not doing this for free.
Yeah, the kindness of their heart.
So then perhaps,
right, exactly.
Perhaps there's even more of a reason not to go after these folks that are gaming the system by making the $40, the $50 a month, because both parties are benefiting from it. Do you see that as a reason maybe that these apps have decided, okay, well, we're not going to pursue the person that's made their DIY phone farm because the app developer is making money and the person at the other end is making money, so it's kind of mutually beneficial in a way. Is that a factor in this, or does it end up being where if they had the opportunity, they would still pursue the person who's downloaded the app?
Yeah, so there's definitely a dynamic between one half of the phone farmers I spoke to who kind of just play by the book. They'll only run, multiple phones, but they won't really do anything extra shady. Then there's another half which will use software to trick the phone into thinking there's a human pushing the buttons, and they will use VPNs and they'll route their traffic through various places, and that gets a lot more gray, a lot more quickly. People in the former half, the ones who kind of want to play by the books and not annoy anybody, they made that exact point you just made is like, well, there's a mutually beneficial relationship here. We don't want to screw over the companies, the app developers, because then they may screw us over as well. At the moment, everybody's winning. But then, of course, other people do go ahead and try to further manipulate the system, and they'll get banned, and then maybe the app developers will get annoyed and they'll lose the ad networks and that sort of thing. So, yeah, there is that tension, but some people just go ahead and abuse it anyway.